I said, I believe Terence Crawford's ability to switch from southpaw to orthodox has slipped. He's not as effective when he was in the orthodox stance as he once was yesteryear. Okay? Terence Crawford, today's time, when he's in the orthodox stance, he gets hit a lot. He gets touched a lot. His timing is off. I don't know if it's because he's facing bigger, stronger athletes, fighters, now that he's moved up to welterweight. I don't know if his age, he's about to be 35 in September. Father Time is undefeated. Okay. Inactivity since, 2019, he's only fought twice. He fought once in 2020, once in 2021. Okay. So he's not very active. And you can see when he was in the orthodox stance against Kell Brook's jab and timing was getting to Terence Crawford. When he was in the orthodox stance against Igor Kavalauskas was getting to him. When he was in the orthodox stance against Showtime Sean Porter was getting to him and was being effective. Terence Crawford had to make the adjustment to go into southpaw to offset his opponents. Well, Errol Spence is a naturally bigger, natural southpaw. So southpaws don't like to face southpaws. And I thought that Terence Crawford's ability to switch from orthodox to southpaw and continue to give Errol Spence different looks would be his key to victory. But since that has slipped now, right, I think it's going to be, Terence Crawford is going to make it more difficult. And you can see that on the inside, when Sean Porter was on the inside, when Igor Kavalauskas was on the inside. If you look at the fight with Igor Kavalauskas and Terence Crawford, you heard Andre Ward in a commentary saying Igor Kavalauskas is getting the best of Terence Crawford on the inside. He's being first. He's more effective on the inside. And I don't like how Terence Crawford is looking. And Terence Crawford needs to start to wear Igor Kavalauskas down, and then start to work his way on the inside. Now, he did get the stoppage victory, but those guys are not Errol Spence. When you look at Sean Porter and Terence Crawford, on the inside, Sean Porter was more physical. Terence Crawford was uncomfortable. Andre Ward, once again, had Sean Porter up on the cards because of that. These guys are not Errol Spence, right? Insert Errol Spence. It's going to be a problem for Terence Crawford on the inside because Errol Spence is going to live in that wheelhouse. That's his wheelhouse. That's where he likes to be.
Those are the words of Blueblood Sports TV once again. Shout out to him as he predicts that Terence Crawford is slipping. Terence Crawford is no longer the fighter that he used to be. He's no longer able to do the things that he used to do. And he based that on different ways. First off, I don't call it bias because of the reasoning that he had behind it. Maybe he is getting older. Maybe it is inconsistency. But then if we want to talk about inconsistency, to counterpunch Blueblood Sports TV, Errol Spence has the same amount of fights in the same amount of time. But the thing is, he is younger. And like I've told people, just like I said about Canelo and Triple G, Canelo Alvarez did not want to fight Triple G until a certain time frame. Counterpunch. And I think the same thing with Errol Spence. I think Errol Spence didn't want to fight Terence Crawford. I think his handlers didn't want him to fight Terence Crawford. I don't think no one wanted him to fight Terence Crawford. Okay, why? Because Terence Crawford was, through all the things that he's been through, the ninth fight stoppages that he's done, he was held back by Top Rank to a degree where he couldn't get the fights that he wanted. Okay, when Terence Crawford confronted Errol Spence, do you guys know that was 3 years ago? So that put Terence Crawford around the same age that Errol Spence is right now. So Errol Spence was maybe 30, 29 in his prime, but so was Terence Crawford. But what do? If you're not sure on a fight or you're not sure on the outcome, if you can't beat a fighter, what do? You wait. It's the promotional or trainer strategy strategic way of waiting a fighter out. Okay, that's what you do when you're dealing with greatness. You can't beat greatness. You just have to wait for greatness to become non-great or to become dull. Just wait to a great fighter to start slipping. Now the question is Blueblood right? Was he slipping? No, I don't think Terence Crawford was slipping. I think Terence Crawford was just fighting guys that took him longer to adjust to. And Terence Crawford showed you by stopping Shawn Porter something that Errol Spence couldn't even do. A younger, bigger, stronger Errol Spence could not do. He showed us all. He found out that he was down and Shawn Porter was up. What did he do? He went in there and stopped Shawn Porter. So there's gears that both fighters have. Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, but I think by far, if Errol Spence, I see him and he has good ability, very good ability. The consistency that he works to the body is epic. I love it. I love body work. That's one thing that I first noticed about Errol Spence. This man can rip to the body and that could break you down. But a guy like Terence Crawford, can he beat Terence Crawford on the inside? Yeah. But do you think Terence Crawford is going to stay on the inside? No. Because Terence Crawford is always looking for the counter. Now, what I will agree with Blueblood with, he is getting hit a lot. And I do question, like, yo, what happens if Errol Spence catches Terence Crawford like he caught Shawn Porter? Ooh. Right? What happens at that point? Because I've seen Terence Crawford get caught a lot by Jose Benavidez. If you guys can remember, he got caught with shots and I was like, oh shit. Because I was actually like, damn, Terence Crawford, he could get knocked out from some of these shots that he was getting taken. But he took this shot and then he kept moving. But he kept working and he kept adjusting. And he finally found that hole. And that's the term that Terence Crawford uses, that hole. To lay that uppercut, to knock out Jose Benavidez, to put a first loss on his record. Okay, so those type of fights like that showed diversity. And here's the problem with Terence Crawford. Besides Kell Brook and Shawn Porter, those guys, Mean Machine, which was undefeated, Jose Benavidez, which was undefeated, Jeff Horn, which was undefeated, strangely enough, but which was undefeated. There was a lot of undefeated fighters that he fought. And none of those other guys have fought. So he was just fighting the guys that he could fight. But who's to say those guys, Khan, Mean Machine, Kell Brook, Jeff Horn, who say those, Jose Benavidez, who says those guys couldn't beat any of those guys at PBC? See, because none of them matched up with each other. So we don't know how the matchups were based on comparison because there was no one to compare it to. The only people that we can compare Errol Spence and Terence Crawford to is Shawn Porter and Kell Brook. Now, Errol Spence stopped Kell Brook, busted his other side of his skull, took that IBF belt in England, mind you, and he went balls to wall with Shawn Porter. So, again, him saying that Terence Crawford is slipping, I think that he's just basing that off of the opposition that we won't and don't have anything to compare it to. Okay? That's the difference. But is he getting older? Yeah, he's getting older. Will he fight like that or continue to fight like that and at that level? I don't think he will. Eventually he won't. Right? But has Terence Crawford got to that point now? That remains to be seen. So Blue he's switched up his terms, and I think it was watching Errol Spence take on a guy that beat Terence Crawford in the amateurs, a very experienced guy. But a guy that didn't have the tenacity or the skill set and the closing power, should I say, to stop Errol Spence. Because if Terence Crawford hurts Errol Spence, it would be because it was something well timed and something that he set up. Okay? And again, what I seen from Errol Spence showed me that the man can be hurt, and the person that could stop him is Terence Bud Crawford. But vice versa. But anyway, you guys tell me what you think of Blue Blood Sports TV saying that Terence Crawford no longer has the skill that he used to have. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been counterpunching. Peace.